Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Oh, I've destroyed my desk already. It means the world to me. Thank you very, very much. It means the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Today, we welcome along someone who has inspired me on every level and someone who I'm sure will inspire all you guys as well. I'm sure you've seen her work across the BBC over the last few years. And that, of course, is Danielle Hope. And if anyone is unfamiliar with her work, let's take a moment to introduce her right now. Danielle is an actor, singer, and part of musical theatre folklore. She began her professional career only 18 years old, where she was selected from over 9,000 girls to be in the final 10 of the BBC show Over the Rainbow in 2010, led, of course, by Andrew Lloyd Webber. A TV show dedicated to finding the new Dorothy that would lead the brand new staging of The Wizard of Oz that subsequently went on at the Palladium in 2011. She wowed judges with performances of Could It Be Magic by Barry Manilow, On My Own from Les Miserables, and famously Mambo Italiano, written by Bob Merrill, which was made famous by the great Dean Martin. Upon taking the role, she won the 2011 Broadway World UK Award for Best Leading Actress in a Musical, and was also nominated for the WhatsOnStage Theatregoers Choice Award for Best London Newcomer. Since then, she has also appeared in Les Miserables at the Queen's, which I was lucky to see her at. The last 5 years at Greenwich, the UK tour of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, Sound of Music UK tour, Sandy in Greece, another UK tour, Snow White at the Palladium, Waterfall, a brand new musical played in Bangkok, and Kinky Boots in an off-Broadway show. And also check out her singles, Trouble and Lie to Me, which you'll find on Spotify right now. Some lovely, lovely songs there. I'm sure we expect many more to come. But in the meantime, Danielle, hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction.
Hey, it's all you, mate. It's all you.
Sometimes when you hear someone reading out your own bio, you're like, "Oh, that's cool," and you kind of forget that it's about you. So it was really nice to be reminded of some of those early things. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
No, 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 no. It's just like, I sort of grew up sort of that 2010. I mean, we were talking before we came on. It's like, how was that 15 years ago?
I
Honestly,
know.
it's, it's mental, honestly. Well, where does the time go, especially when you're having fun? But anyway, we start at the beginning. So in your case, Danny, where did it come from? The love of the arts, acting, singing, musical theatre? Where did it all start for you?
So I've always loved storytelling and I've always loved music. And so when I discovered it was possible to share stories through music, I became really passionate about following in that direction. And so, starting with school musicals at my high school, Knutsford High School in Manchester, and also well, I was still at school, still at Knutsford when I auditioned for Over the Rainbow. And I was working at Manchester United, the football ground, Old Trafford, as a waitress. And that's where they were holding the auditions for Dorothy, the first auditions. And so that kind of snowballed from there, as we now know, looking back.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'd say my love of music, my house was always full of music. The radio was always on. My mom always had Celine Dion, Shania Twain, The Cause playing in the car. I do a medley on one of my albums that's called Mum's Car, which is basically how I learned to sing, was just imitating all these people. And I've just always been drawn to live theatre. I love the connection. I love that everyone is invited and captured and held within one moment together that will never be repeated
Mm.
again. Even if it's the same show 8 shows a week, it's different with every breath, right? So that's kind of what drew me to it initially. I wasn't like a typical confident stage school kid when I was younger. I was very quiet, very shy. It wasn't until I was about 13 at high school that I started to participate in the school musicals and just found that love and passion for musical theatre.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we were talking before we came on. Obviously, you grew up in Manchester, of course, but since you've been in New York for the last 5 years, and I can tell by your accent that the New York has definitely embraced you, hasn't it?
It has a little bit, yeah, and it's so interesting that you mentioned this because a couple of years ago I would have felt really uncomfortable hearing that feedback or talking about that
Right.
because and now actually it really excites me and I'd love just to share a little bit about that and why and in hope
Please.
that for anyone else who has moved away or travels the world or does this in case it offers any kind of comfort or inspiration, or even just a slight change of mind. One of the things I'm working on currently is a new musical and a novel, and I'm writing them both simultaneously. And the entire idea sparked from constantly being asked or told that my accent is different and my accent has changed, and oh, you don't think you're not from Manchester anymore, are you? Or and what's funny is that's been a constant theme in my life. So when I went to school in Knutsford, I was told I didn't sound like I was from Urmston anymore. When I moved to London, I people in Manchester thought I sounded too posh, and people in London thought I sounded really northern. And then I moved to the States, and then no one knew where to put my northern accent because it wasn't like a Mary Poppins British, or it wasn't, a Manchester thing that they were familiar with. And I used to get really shy and really embarrassed about it. And actually, I've learned to embrace it because my my voice is a true reflection. And I will also say I have something called in-brace in right now, which also does affect my speech slightly. And they're like fixed braces behind your teeth.
Okay.
Just, just filling us all in.
No,
And
no, didn't notice.
thank you. I've worked really hard to work around them. You can see me adjusting my mic stand here because it keeps falling down. So if
That's
we
all right.
if we see that during the episode, it's all good.
No.
And so something that I have really kind of centered around and love to connect with is that I have been so fortunate and worked really, really hard to be able to travel the world. As you mentioned a couple minutes ago, I did a new musical in Bangkok last year, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. And my voice is a true reflection of all of the places and all of the spaces that I've been lucky enough to be in. And something that used to make me feel really insecure now actually really gives me this warm security of like, wow, if I hadn't been to all those places, yeah, my voice and my accent wouldn't have changed at all. And so if this is kind of like permission or license or comforting to anyone else who has moved away, maybe to Australia and you have a bit of a twang. I've got some friends who've moved over there. Is embrace it because it really is a reflection of everything that you've accomplished and every place you've been and every person you've connected with.
Yeah.
And I'm really fascinated by the way we shape our words as well as what we're saying. So it's a bit of a passion of mine now, but it was born out of something I was really kind of insecure and felt vulnerable about. So thank
Yeah.
you for bringing it up because I'd love to speak about it now in hope
Yeah.
that it will just encourage other people to just speak however they speak.
Exactly. No, I'm sure you're definitely helping someone out there. Well, definitely more than one, I'm sure. Now, it reminds me of do you know who Michael McIntyre is?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, he had this little skit. I'll just go off topic very quickly. He talked about people from like the north, so like Manchester, moving to London for the first time, and how sometimes quickly they can lose their accents. And he said to them, "Oh, cool. So how long have you been living down here? Oh, about 3 weeks now. Yeah, I just their accent." And then he said, and then it all changes when you give him a drink. See, I'll have a glass of white wine. Did I need that?
That's it.
Yeah.
I know. Accent work, it's really fascinating to me. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. No, I love talking to accent coaches about stuff and placements in the mouth and everything. But anyway, we could digress onto that. So yeah, look, Danny, let's jump into Over the Rainbow. So of course, that's where everyone knows you from and where we sort of first heard of your work and your singing. Tell me about how did you first apply? Well, yeah, the beginning of Over the Rainbow journey. Where did it start?
Sure. So, I mean, we're going back 15 years now, so I'm going to do my best. Not that I could ever forget it. So, as I mentioned earlier, I auditioned in the first round at Old Trafford, the Manchester United stadium where I worked. And
Hmm.
then there was two rounds that day, I believe, like the initial, and then we went into another room with
Yeah.
a larger panel, and then that one was filmed. And then we found out kind of like round by round what would be next. And so there was a round in London, and then that was 100, I believe. And then it went down to 50 at something that they called Dorothy Farm. And it was like a weekend intensive we all did. And we worked through the scenes and we worked through singing some of the songs. We got to meet Andrew for the first time and sing for him, which was, I mean, if that's where my journey had ended, that would have been incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember walking in and singing for him. and being like, "Oh my gosh, this is the creator of the Phantom of the Opera." I used to watch that movie
Mm.
every night.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, and
that
me.
that was right. So that
Yeah.
was a huge thing. And then we moved into the live shows, and we all lived in London in something called we called the Dorothy House, and we all lived together, which was really, really fun. And then we did the live shows every Saturday, and we moved through those week by week. And every week we got a new song allocated to us, so we weren't part of the choosing for that. I remember the first week they let us send them a list of potential songs that we'd want to sing. We were allowed to sing one musical theatre song,
Mm.
although we didn't end up getting picked musical theatre songs, so it's kind of funny. And I wrote a list of 25 very obscure, very indie musical numbers that I was ready and prepared to perform. I'm giving you prime musical theatre high school nerd who is like, here is half of do you remember the Edges, the song cycle, things like that, like all of
Yeah,
these,
yeah,
like
yeah.
I think we'd paid like $2 to have Pasek and Paul send their CD like to our school. Like we all put in like 50p. And so it was all music like that and wonderful, wonderful songs. And then I got given Red by Daniel Merriweather, which was the only pop song that I put on the list. Still one of my favorite songs, actually, from the entire show. I love developing the story and working with our acting coach on the show at learning how to approach a pop song in that way and develop like an entire story and character development through it. And I still use some of the lessons that I learned for that song today, like in self tapes or in audition rooms. And so I'm very grateful for getting to work through that pop song as my first entry onto the show. And another thing, just while that was top of mind, is it's really interesting because we're in like a self-tape era
Yeah.
now, whereas 15 years ago it was all in the room. And
Mm.
I feel incredibly lucky to have had so much on-camera training and experience at such a young age, because I do still find that there's so much I got to learn in such a very intense period of time. That 3 months we just didn't stop. We
Mm.
didn't stop for anything. And so we were in a constant state of learning, which learning can sometimes be a state of stress, right? Because you're always adapting and changing and trying to grow into a new space that you have never been in before.
Mm.
And so some of those skills I still use and adapt today for self tapes, for on camera work. And so it feels very full circle, having started there, moving into live theatre after Over the Rainbow, and now getting to do a little bit more screen work. I get to utilize some of the first skills I ever developed as a professional working actor. So
Mm.
really
Yeah.
grateful for Over the Rainbow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was, I think we mentioned off camera that I do remember watching you in it, but I think I joined the party a little bit too late. I think it's like sort of the
Oh,
last.
it's never too late.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like sort of like the last sort of 3 weeks. It was over 10 weeks or something, wasn't it? Because obviously 10 of you, then one of, and then each week someone was eliminated off.
That's it.
And I remember seeing like the last sort of three sort of weeks, but I would be remiss if I don't mention today your performance of Mambo Italiano, which, one of a better phrase, just stole the freaking series, honestly. And I think that was a major, major contributing factor to you actually winning the whole thing. And so, yeah, tell me about what was it like performing that song and then suddenly like the reaction that you got from it afterwards. What was it like?
Yeah, great question. I was not anticipating the reaction to Italiano, if I'm honest.
Mm.
I really thought that was the week I was going home. I had never heard the song before, and it wasn't from a musical. And I just thought, oh no, I'm saying words like mozzarella and fisher baccalara and things, and I just thought, oh goodness, like
Mm.
I think this is it for me. But I was very excited to have an upbeat song. I'd been allocated quite a lot of ballads. I'd been unwell in a couple of the weeks previously and like working through a pretty nasty cold. And so I was really excited to be free of that and just kind of like, dance. And it was the week we all had dancers come in as well. And I just remember being really excited about the energy change with the song. And I thought, I'm just going to embrace this. And if it is my last performance, at least it's going to have been, really exciting and really high energy. And of
Mm.
course, when they rolled that Vesper out, oh, I was 100% in by then. I was so excited. I didn't drive at the time. I only learned to drive here in the States actually about 3 years ago. And I really, really, really wanted to keep the Vespa. I didn't, but maybe one day. And so working through that song was really challenging because I'm like, okay, I have to develop such a deep like character story and
Yeah.
arc for this song to make it make sense. And it was incredible to be able to have dancers and fellow actor performers with me so I could really play with creating relationships. I'm a
Mm.
big fan of, and I know we'll talk about Les Mis a little bit later, but I'm a
Yeah, yeah,
big
yeah.
fan of ensemble companies and ensemble performances. And so I feel like there's a huge part of me that comes alive in character development when I have other people with me on stage. And so I really, really enjoyed that. But yeah, I thought I was a goner that week. I really did not expect the reaction that it got.
Yeah, no, it was extraordinary because then I remember after having watched your performance back recently, like prior to today, there's certain moments where the camera cuts to Lloyd Webber himself, and you can see him literally just going, "Wow, okay, what's going on here?" And and then you see the whole. I can't remember the guy's name, but the other guy who was on the panel.
John Partridge.
John Partridge, yes, thank you. He is just, I mean, he's just loving it. He's just there, like, just doing his thing, and I just
Oh,
thought,
and John is a fantastic actor, performer, dancer. And so, when John embodies something in that way, that's really exciting as
mm,
feedback.
yeah, if anyone who's not familiar, I think he did a long stint in EastEnders, I think, for a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's had a huge career. Oh my gosh, I don't think there's
yeah.
anything he hasn't done.
Oh,
And actually, I got to work with John professionally then at the Birmingham Hippodrome, and we did Snow White together. So that was really crazy and wonderful to be able to work with, someone as experienced as him, and of course, because he was one of the judges on the panel, so to get
yeah,
to
yeah.
professionally work together was really exciting.
Yeah, and I think, well, one thing that sort of jumps out to me about Mambo Italiano, because you said that that was the week that you were sure that, this is it. I'm going to be heading home now. I've done really well. I think that was week 8 you did that one, I think. Anyway, it was one of the final, like I say, I only watched it in the final few weeks. So it was like one of the final weeks of there, and you thought, yeah, well, might be going home this week. I've had a blast. Let's just go out with a bang. Why not?
Absolutely.
And it was just like this. I don't want to say, I don't think carefree attitude is the right phrase, but it's just like this feeling of, do you know what? I've had a good time. Let's just go out with a bang. Make sure I have something to remember it by very, very well. And from that attitude that you had at the time, you won the show. Yeah. And yeah, tell me, what was it like hearing your name saying you've got Dorothy?
I think there's moments like that that we all experience in our life,
Yeah.
in different ways. And I think I finally understood when you watch a movie and they drown all the sound out and things go into slow-mo
Mm,
and you can't hear much and it feels like there's a swelling hum around you. And that's the only way I can describe the initial feeling. I also always laugh at myself because of exactly what followed. Um, because, we were in this environment for a long time and we had a job to do as well. Like, yes, it's a competition and we're like doing our auditions effectively every week. But we're also on a television show, and television programs like this that are live are very structured,
yeah.
cannot go over the time. And
Yeah.
so everything is planned and directed and choreographed, according to time. And so when they announced my name, I went into autopilot of, okay, they said whoever whoever hears their name will step forward 3 steps. We'll go to camera 2. We'll put the shoes on. We'll sit here. We'll go to step 2, sing verse 1. Go to step 5, sing the rest. Get into the hot air balloon. And I was a huge fan of the Pixar movie Up. And so I felt like Russell and Carl going up in the air balloon. Get into there and then finish the show. And that was my only thought. There was nothing else moving through Danielle Hope's brain at the point when I was announced the winner of the show, other than that. And something that people picked up on, and it became kind of like a laughing point, and I had to explain this, was because I think Andrew was going to gift me the shoes that had been in that bubble next to the throne. And I just picked them up and I just put them on. Instead of doing the whole ceremonious, like, you have the ruby slippers, I went into, I am a professional actor. I must hit my mark and I must make sure that this show continues. The show must literally go on. And it wasn't until after the cameras were cut and the confetti had fallen where I could actually kind of like clock out and back into my body and into the space and be like, what just happened? Not to quote Elphaba, but did that really just happen? It was that like spark moment, that realization. So that memory does make me laugh.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny, because you say like you're up in the hot air balloon and everything, and
This might stand, I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. It's like you're up there, and then the cameras go, okay, and cut. Okay, well done, everybody. Right, well done, Danielle. Right, let's go home. And then suddenly it's like, okay, cool. And you step off your mark. And then, did you ever have a moment where you sort of went back to like your dressing room or something? Then suddenly you look down at your feet and you go, wait, did I just what just happened? Did I just win that? I was like, did that ever happen?
Um, Absolutely. I think it was very delayed though.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say like maybe a week later. There was so much that followed the
yeah,
final episode. And also the grieving with the other, girls and Dorothy's, like we're in this house together. A certain part of our lives had come to an end. And I think something that I remember saying so often, because of course, when you win something like that, people ask you like, "Oh my gosh, how do you feel? Your dreams have come true." This and I'm glad to say I hadn't really changed much in this way. That my answer was very direct and no nonsense because it was the truth and it still is. Well, I was like, well, the work begins now. Like that wasn't the end. It was the beginning, and
yeah.
now I have a whole different focus. And so for me, it was I think at that age and in England, I felt, and having done a reality TV program, I felt a little nervous about celebrating myself. That's not something that's ever come easy to me,
No, no,
or
no,
to many of us, I don't think. Like,
no,
we're
no,
not
no, me
gonna
neither. Me neither.
shout from the rooftops, like, yeah, I did it. I won. I don't think I ever had that feeling.
Mm,
I don't know if I ever will. I think now, like, we can reflect back and go, wow, I'm so proud of the work that I've done. We all went through so much to get where we were on that show. And like, we all worked so hard. And I'm really proud of all of the work and the dedication that I put in.
mm.
But I don't think I ever had that feeling that I think the media were chasing at the time of like, let me scream this from the rooftops, let me celebrate myself. I was very focused on the next job, which was playing Dorothy. So we did Over the Rainbow. The next focus was I need to train and I need to get my body ready to do 8 shows a week to sustain this dialogue, to understand this character. And of course, like after you finish a show like that, there's a lot of kind of events and media, press conferences and things and stuff that I'd never done before. And so all of that kind of was the next 3 months of my life,
Mm.
was interviews and concerts and things like that.
Yeah, then suddenly you're in the washing machine of things, and then you're just like on the hamster wheel or whatever you want to call it of just like of this thing. Am I right in thinking that I was doing my research for today, and am I right thinking you never went to a traditional drama school? You never went to any of like a drama school as such, or am I be correct?
So when I was on the program, I had my folder with my little rep and all my auditions ready for drama school. So I'd paid for my auditions. I was ready to go. That's the exact age I was at. And when I finished the program, I'd missed my arts ed was my first like scheduled, booked, paid for audition.
Okay.
And so I wrote to the head of the school at the time and said, look, I'm so sorry. This is my name. I won't be able to make it to the audition. It was funny because the Dorothy house is in Chiswick. So we were 10 minutes walk from arts ed, which my brain didn't quite compute at the time. And so I explained like why I had to miss it. And they were like, Danielle, we know what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I've seen you on the TV.
Like, come and talk to us afterwards, and we can schedule something in. And so I was really relieved because going to university was a huge goal of mine. It was really important. I was really excited to do it. And so when I did finish the program and we finished some of the initial like press conferences and tours, I went to arts ed for one term with the second years. I couldn't carry on but be like after one term because we started rehearsals, previews, and tech. For anyone who's not been in previews, tech rehearsals for a brand new show, it is all encompassing, requires 100% of your energy, focus, and dedication.
Takes a lot out of you. It does.
Indeed. Yeah. And so I wasn't able to continue on, but I applied what I had learned. And I was very grateful to have gone there. So I had a small section of traditional drama school or conservatoire, as they say here in the States, training. And I really did ask so many questions when I was working. And I made sure to make the most of learning from everyone I got to work with. You know, I worked on The Wizard of Oz with Michael Crawford, Hannah Waddingham, Paul Keating. So many incredible people were on that show, and that's just to name a few. And so I got to witness, observe, and learn from some of the most wonderful and dedicated actors.
Yeah. And so the reason for asking that question really, because I remember thinking about like, your time and it was sort of 10 weeks doing Dorothy and then you're straight into the Palladium the following year. Did those 10 weeks with the BBC and Over the Rainbow, did that feel like a drama school training? I know you went to arts ed for that term, but did it feel like, in a sense, what it was like to be at drama school?
I think if you condense 3 years of drama school into 10 weeks, maybe that would feel like
Yeah,
it was because
that'd be
at,
intense.
at least with university, you might finish class at 6 and then you get to go and hang out with your friends. We never switched off. We
Mm,
lived in the house together. We were rehearsing. We had quick turnarounds and deadlines. And so I feel like the program was aired for 10 weeks, but remember, we were working on this 2 months before it was aired. And so it was three months, 3.5 months of all of our lives. And in that 3 months, I don't think any of us took that moment to switch off. I don't remember kind of like decompressing once. I think that was an age and experience thing, as well as a situation and what was being demanded of us at 17. I didn't have the skills yet to know how to step back.
mm.
It was 15 years ago, and now it's incredible to see with social media, there's so much advocacy for like mental health and rest and doing what you need.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But at 17 in a situation like that 15 years ago, it didn't really feel like a space you could say, hey, I need a day off. It was kind of like, well, then you lose, like you're out,
Yeah.
which was, why most of us work through colds. And sometimes you do, right? You have to do all you can and work through, and it's totally fine. And so I think that experience was incredibly intense for all of us because there was no break
Mm.
from it. So it was a really intensive training ground, that's for sure. I mean, I think we all walked out of there with the most incredible stamina.
I bet. Yeah. It's it sounded like it taught you a lot in that time, but yeah, I just want to let's jump into, so you've done it, you've won the show, and then there you are at the Palladium in 2011. So playing possibly one of the most iconic characters in all of musical theatre, Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. And so I suppose to kick off this section, I was wanting to ask you this. Who is Dorothy to you?
That's a lovely question. I recently filmed a documentary all about Dorothy that will be
Yeah.
coming out this year, I hope.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to find that, I definitely dive deep onto this question. Dorothy to me today is different to who Dorothy was to me 15 years ago, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try and kind of connect both for today. Dorothy as a character was such a beautiful vehicle in a show. I think Dorothy really facilitates a lot of that show. Like if you go back and you watch the movie or you saw the show, something I was really aware of is that she was always introducing another character. Obviously, we were following her story and her journey, but her kindness and curiosity was something that I always really connected with. I'm someone who likes to lead with curiosity before assuming or any judgments are made. I think the more questions, the more we can understand about people and about what they're going through, the more we can be of support and of service. And I feel like that's what Dorothy does for the entire story.
Yeah.
You know, she welcomes these strangers and says, okay, let me ask you some questions about that. What do you need? What do you not have? Why don't you come with me and we'll go together? You know, and so that openness and support was something that was really important for me to incorporate into Dorothy. And I also think, as you mentioned, it's a huge iconic role. As you can imagine, nearly every single newspaper or interview would start with that question, like, how will you fill the most famous shoes? Or, you know, this is an iconic role. What's your, unique spin? Or what's and that question kind of followed me around for years because I went on to do Les Mis and then Maria and the Sound of Music, and it was
Yeah.
a lot of shoes, kinky
Yeah.
boots, the literal shoes. And
Yeah.
so it's a skill that I feel I have had a lot of practice honing, and I will be forever honing. But I know that as long as I am authentic and really read what is on the page, investigate this character with curiosity, that my interpretation will always be unique. Like I don't have to worry about making
Sure.
something different.
Yeah.
In fact, something I've often come back to is the text, is the original music. If anyone who is listening or if yourself, you've seen me in performances, it's going to be very rare that you're going to see me riffing on the melody or doing some big crazy changes unless they feel dramatically integral or it comes out in a moment, which I'm always welcoming and open to. One of my favorite ways to honor the text in a piece of writing is to bring it right back down to basics and sing exactly what is on the page and figure out why it's there, why that note was written. And something I learned throughout my career with working with a lot of wonderful musical directors over my time and directors
Yeah.
is, a note is written in a certain place for a reason. And there's, I guess you could say, like, you have to earn it. But what I mean by earn it is something must move you or move your character to a different emotional state or place or discovery so that you are reaching that note at that time in the song. And I find that by listening to just the accompaniment without adding the lyrics, without adding the melody yet, you can gain so much insight into what that character's journey is through music. Again, it's musical theatre. We're telling a story through the music.
Of course.
You can connect with that. And often that's what I do if I'm working on a very well-known show too, not just new music. With new musicals, it's almost easier because there's no guideline yet. So you listen to the music for the first time and you don't already have an idea. When it's a show that's been running like Les Mis for over 35 years, when you're stepping in to kind of, have your go, I say, like holding the baton when it's passed to you next. Because I don't feel like we ever really own these roles. I feel like we're all passing them on, sharing them, keeping them alive, doing our bit to keep these stories alive.
Yeah.
And so with Dorothy, that was one of my explorations, was to come back to the music, come back to the words, and find my own way through that. And that was my way in to connect. And I found it was really rewarding. It always left room for discovery. And that's what I love. If we can have discovery
Yeah.
in something that everyone already knows, because, you know, half the audience, that first opening of Over the Rainbow comes in, and everyone is already in their minds ready to sing along in their brains, right? Like they know where it's going. And so if you can honor being in that moment and discovering it with the audience, with yourself, moment by moment, breath by breath, that's for me how I like to keep something alive.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just going back to basics. Why am I saying this? Where am I? What am I trying to do to the other person in this? And I think also, more like specifically, obviously, the song "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," and specifically the moment where she goes, where it gets to the chorus. I'm not going to sing it now because I can't sing it, but where it goes, "Somewhere over the rainbow," when it jumps at that point, and it's
Mm.
almost like that crescendo, if that's the right word, or that jump to that note there, it's like something like soaring, like you are soaring over this rainbow. And that's the beauty of music. You can create all this imagery by just going from this octave to that octave, and then you literally just, there's like a journey there. But like specifically when you got to that moment, because that's the bit that everyone who's a fan of musical theatre knows. Yeah, like when you got to that song every night, what's it like in that moment specifically?
So it would be very easy to kind of get in your head about something like that, right? Because it is an iconic song.
Oh
You're at the
yeah, yeah,
London
yeah.
Palladium, and it's your first professional job, and there's 2,000 people. And so I would be lying if I didn't say that there were nerves that came with that and that they fluctuated. And sometimes it would be on a matinee 3 months in, I would just be like, whoa, like the gravity of the task I was about to take on would do. Also, at the end of the song, and I guess this is a very practical mindset as well, so I'm gonna like balance the two. We're about to go into a hurricane, and the entire floor is going to start moving in different directions about 3 inches behind my feet. And a dog is about to run on into my arms unleashed, and I have to make sure that I safely catch them, get off the stage, make a 22-second full costume change, including socks, shoes, and bows
Wow.
for the color change, and get through a whole sequence, which could be quite dangerous. It's in the dark. It's very well rehearsed. We have an amazing stage manager, obviously, and stage management team who were always like on it and focused, making sure everyone was okay. And so for that song for me was not only something so incredible that I got to express every night at the London Palladium, one of the last places Judy Garland sang that song in that spot on that stage. And so the history, but it was also like this moment of calm. There was nothing else on the stage. We kept the stage really dark and bare. It was just me. I was very close to the edge of the stage, on stage left, down stage left. And it was like being held in this suspended space and moment before all of this chaos and before, like, you know, when you get strapped into a roller coaster and
Yeah.
the thing goes and you know, like, oh, even if you wanted to get off, you can't. Like
No.
there's no stopping now.
I'm strapped in
So
now.
that was it. And so that was also a similar feeling of the anticipation of once this song ends, this show does not stop for Dorothy. This character does not step off stage. You know, costume changes are happening if I get to go off stage for a heartbeat, or a flying monkey's taking you and you have to run down from the roof in the rain down to stage right. You know, like it was nonstop. And so it was a really beautiful stillness before the rest of the roller coaster, which was the show. And
Yeah.
so that was a really beautiful. moment to be surrendered into, and sing.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about like obviously I don't need to add sort of pressure on to anyone doing Dorothy or anything, but obviously there's the expectation because it's this thing that everybody knows. But it must have been, was it ever? I'm sure this crossed your mind as well. But did you ever get to that moment every night and you think, what a pleasure it is to sing this song at this very spot on stage where Judy Garland sang it all those years ago, and you're delivering your version of it to 2,000 people every night and afternoon. I mean, what an honor that must have been.
Absolutely. And at 18 years old, a girl from Manchester, you know what
I
I mean?
mean,
Like it dreams coming true does not fully encompass what that was. And actually, every night after the show, me and Michael Crawford would go out to the front of the Palladium and do autographs and signings and meet and greets. And then we would go back into the theatre and wait to be kind of like taken and escorted out.
mm,
And so after every show, I would sit with the full house lights on, the little mice running around. Yes, there's mice in theatres. They're
yes,
very old,
they
and
are.
everyone leaves their popcorn on the floor. So, and so I would sit watching little mice run around on the edge of the London Palladium, and sometimes I would have a little sing to myself, or I'd just sit and that really was my moment of like gratitude and really sitting in the honor of being there. And I know that that sounds maybe really
No, not at
cringy
all.
to some people or really, but that is exactly what I did after every evening show,
Yeah.
and to close out the evening. So that the luxury, the honor, and the privilege was never lost on me.
Yeah, for sure. Do you know, it reminds me of like when you go to when you go and see Hamlet or something like that, and well, Hamlet specifically, obviously there's one speech in there which everybody knows, to be or not to be, and it's almost like I remember some people. I think Derek Jacobi talks about this. He says that even the people who don't know Shakespeare, they go to the theatre and they're like, oh, okay, I'll go along, we'll see this, and then when to be or not to be happens, there's kind of he described it as like a tangible silence that falls on the audience because it's the one line that everybody knows. Every man and his dog knows this line, even if they don't know what it means. And then when you hear an actor say it in that, in this space, and with the context of, this guy is contemplating whether to live or die, and then suddenly you're like, oh, right, this is why this is so famous. And yet, in your case, when you're singing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," I mean, forgive me, but I'm not too sure what is the meaning behind that song. Well, what is Dorothy singing about when she says "Somewhere over the rainbow, where dreams come true"?
So I don't want to speak too much on that because I think everyone owns their own interpretation. And
Yeah,
so I don't think there is a correct answer to this.
yeah,
I mean, in context of the show, it's one of the biggest I want songs ever written. That this character, it's hope. It's something more, something beyond. I think Somewhere Over the Rainbow does a very good job of describing that in such a visual way that it is accessible to everyone. And I think everybody's version of the rainbow is different.
hmm,
And so I also think Dorothy's version of the rainbow changes from the beginning of the show to the end of the show, right? Like realizing what home is, what it actually means, where that place might be. And so I think that interpretation shifts as she does and as she grows and learns and makes some decisions. So for me, it is a song of hope, and there was a decision that I thought was really important to put in that song
mm,
as the catalyst for the rest of the show, because Dorothy, I guess, makes a decision. But the hurricane also helps this decision, right? Like she's
yeah,
being swept away.
yeah. We need to go now. We need to go now.
Yeah, but when the section of if happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why can't I?
Hmm.
and then it's repeated. Now, whenever there's a repeat in a song, I love to approach that as like there's a big reason why we're saying something twice, and it definitely, or it probably doesn't
Yeah.
mean the same thing as it
Yeah.
meant when you sang it before. And so for me, I
Important.
really
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
and to mark a shift in this character's perspective. And so for me, Over the Rainbow, it was a song of hope, of dreams, of yearning, of I want. And then there was an important decision that had to be made before the end of the song to say, you know what? I am going to go and do that. And so every night I allowed that decision. That's what I was working towards, was
Yeah.
figuring out, am I going to do this? And it's like, yeah, if, you know what? If happy little bluebirds fly, why can't I? And so I ended the song in a place of, with a decision of, yeah, I'm going to do this, of that strength. So it starts with curiosity, and then it becomes something tangible for her. And that
Yeah.
was really important for me, so that it didn't just sit as like a nice, dreamy, oh, I wish song. It's like, oh, I have this wish, I have this thing. Oh, I guess I've witnessed it. And I feel that this way in life, right? When you witness that something is possible,
Mm.
it is more believable and achievable in your brain because you've witnessed someone do it. And so for Dorothy, that is the birds, whatever those birds may be. And so that for me was the catalyst, and making that decision was really important in my own version of the storytelling to
Mm.
make sure that we could earn the rest of the show.
Mm.
We have to believe that she would go
Yeah.
to Oz,
Yeah.
or
It's like,
whatever it was she was intending to do before the
yeah.
hurricane.
Yeah. 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 It's like a song of ambition as well. I set a goal, I'm going to achieve it. So, yeah. I mean, it can mean so many things. I mean,
Yeah, so
just
many
that,
things.
yeah, just that image, over the rainbow. And I think, not to sound too dark or too morbid or anything, but a lot of my mum resonates with the song very, very much because it reminds me of well, myself as well, all of us, of her dad who passed away a few years ago, and that song was actually played at his funeral. And so, like, whenever she sees a rainbow now in the sky, she says that song just plays in my head, and I'm just like, it's just that for her anyway. I'm not saying this is what the song's all about, but it's like this image of, oh, sorry, what's this thing in the corner? Go away. Okay, and yeah, and suddenly like she sees like, yeah, for her imagery, she sees him over the rainbow, and knowing that there's a pathway to the other side where she knows that he's safe. And so, and all of our loved ones who have passed on to the other side are safe. I mean, that's just her version of it anyway. So yeah, she loves the Ever Cassidy version. Just as a little plug there for Ever Cassidy. Wow, what a version that was. But no, I re-listened to your version as well, and yeah, I'll say this now. I've no shame in saying this, but you made me cry. You made me cry, Danny. You just the way you captured it was just stunning, absolutely stunning. And just thank you for sharing your voice with the world because you've stunning, absolutely stunning. So thank you for that.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing as well about your family and their connection to the song. That's
Yeah, yeah,
something I see universally with this song. And, when I talk about the song, I'm talking about in context of the show, but
oh yeah,
outside of
sure,
the
sure.
show, I think that song means so much to so many people.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it really is a beautiful song. I mean, I couldn't have picked a better song to have started my entire career with, like to get to sing that 8 times a week for a year. Heavenly to
Heavenly.
connect back to what you said. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, and as you say, like in the context of the show, it means slightly different things, but like any sort of song can be interpreted 100 different ways. So I know it's good to see both sides of it, really, how it's meant for the show and how it's meant in outside of things and stuff. But yeah, no, honestly, we could talk about the Wizard of Oz for ages, but I do want to actually get this in as well. I saw you as Eponine at the Queen's Theatre.
Yes.
And yeah, another fantastic performance from yourself, Danny. Again, congratulations on that. And so we'll get on to Eponine's big song, which is On My Own, just in a little bit. But I'm going to ask you the same question, which I asked you about for Dorothy. Who is Eponine to you?
Oh my gosh. Eponine was one of my favorite characters.
Mm,
I
she's amazing. She's
It's
amazing.
so interesting, so much fun. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I love ensemble shows. And so getting to multi-role or multi-role at the beginning of Les Mis,
Mm,
before, becoming Eponine in Paris when they do the 20-year jump was such an incredible, and we'll probably come back to that,
yeah.
about like honing your craft in that way. And this was my, the job directly after Dorothy. So what a change. What a change from the approach for Dorothy for my entire kind of road leading up to playing that role. This was a more traditional preparation, traditional audition experiences. I think I did 4 rounds, went through the rehearsals with the entire company. And it was a whole new cast like coming in. So I got to rehearse with everyone. It was fantastic. We had flat boots. We had an earthy posture. I mean, Eponine's entire essence and core and body language couldn't
Yeah.
be further from Dorothy's. And it felt
Mhm.
so good to be so far away from something that at that point, when I finished The Wizard of Oz, I had been connected or working on Dorothy, the role, for 2 years effectively, including the program and all of that. It was 2 years in one very particular vocal style and character arc. And so I was really excited and really ready to get started with Eponine. I've always loved that track in the show. I think Unrequited Love is something that I think is so exciting and fascinating to play on stage and to get to discover. We had an incredible cast, an incredible company
It is.
for that entire year. I can still happily say the best friends of my life were made on that show,
Yeah.
and I'm so grateful, truly, truly, from the bottom of my soul for that job. I think it changed me as a human being and as a performer. I had so much fun. And so, yeah, I loved and love Eponine.
Yeah. She's. Am I right thinking you were there with Jerónimo Rauch as
Oh, yes, I
Valjean?
was.
Yeah, and Tam
Yes.
Mutu as Javert, Craig
Yeah.
Mathers as Marius. Yeah, it was wow.
It was wild, honestly. We had
Yeah.
Sierra Burgess Fontaine for, so I had Caroline Sheen, who was a
Caroline,
huge
yeah,
inspiration for me
yeah,
and a good,
yeah. She's been on here,
wonderful.
Caroline. I've interviewed her as well. Yeah,
Oh my gosh, one of my favorite people on the planet.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So Caroline was pregnant when I joined, and so
Oh,
we had about a month with Caroline, had 5 months with Sierra Burgess, and then my now closest friend, Celinda, came on to do the last 6 months of Fontaine. So I had these three incredible, insane Fontaines as well.
yeah.
And something really special that happened with this role is I actually went back and played this role again. It's the only time I've ever done this. And Craig Mather was able to come back and also reprise his role as Marius. Now, there's 3 years between when we first approached these roles and when we both came back for 3 months.
Mm,
And I have to say, it was one of the most exhilarating and exciting character development processes I've ever been in because coming back to a role you played for a year, 3 years later, is incredible. Bringing everything you've learned in
yeah,
those 3 years apart and seeing one of the most fascinating things to me, because I'm a total nerd, was to see what didn't change. Right? Like I reapproached the role with a
mm,
curiosity, with an openness of discovery. And it was interesting to see which instincts were still as solid as they were 3 years ago. And that, like, that was within the context of the show, the direction of the show, and all the information we were given and the parameters in which we are allowed to move. I think that's really important for some people to be aware of is that, in a musical, there are only a certain parameter that actors are allowed to move within because we have a director, a choreographer, a designer, and there are lots of a musical director. And so sometimes we hear someone sing a song and we're like, whoa, I love their riff or their interpretation. When, perhaps in the year someone else is in the show, there were no riffs allowed, or the vocals were really strict and had to stay to how they are.
Yeah.
Same way in character interpretation in scenes or in the way someone delivers a response. You never know what notes or what direction is being given. And so I'm always really generous with actors and performers. If I see something and I go, oh, that didn't quite resonate with me, but I understand the intention.
Mm.
But I may have interpreted that differently. One, we're all going to interpret different emotions different ways, and that's what is exciting, right? That's why we all do this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But two, I always remind myself that there have been moments in my career where I felt really strongly about a certain version of this role or this song, and it's not been the version that I have been able to deliver in the show because we're all working in collaboration. We're all working together. And so, what the result most of the time, if we're all in a harmonic collaboration with respect and, full creativity, the result that the audiences often see is, directly birthed from that collaboration of all minds. And I always like to come back to that
Mm.
and know that, like, we could talk all day about how we would pick something apart, how we would explore different ways we would love to see certain characters done. Everyone has favorites of who have interpreted different roles. And I really do think that everyone has like a unique recipe. And when that, collaboration recipe comes together, the results vary. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, God, we really could talk for ages about that. Honestly, I've got so many things in my head right now, but I'll save them. I'll save them for another time. But no, that's well, we'll get on to On My Own in just a second. But we were talking before you came on. You mentioned there about being in an ensemble and working collaboratively with people, and one of your greatest loves is having a relationship with everyone who's on stage with you at any one time. Not only just, I'm assuming now, not just during showtime, but also in rehearsals and also when you're having a drink at the pub afterwards after a long day. What's it? Where does that love of having a strong relationship with a company? Where does that come from within you?
For me, being a part of a company or a cast is why I love doing this. And it's my passion in the family and the relationships that are created in the work. And getting to be a part of a show where obviously we have like focus points, right? In Les Mis, there are a lot of really important relationships we need to communicate with the audience. But just because like maybe the main focus is not on whatever's happening downstage left, you always have a relationship to everybody else on the stage with you. There's like no dead space. There's no just like we're standing side by side downstage right now while the main characters talk. I don't work that way. And for me, some of the most exciting parts of a long running show or any job is developing all of those relationships, building out that world. I'm a big fantasy book lover, and like world building is so important to me. And so that's no different in a musical or a
Mm.
play or a film. Is you like we are now, I am in relationship to everything in this room in some way, and that is exactly the same for our characters. So I
Mm.
think that's really important to
Yeah,
establish. And
yeah.
so fun. There's so much in there. There's so much creative freedom. And if, say, we talked about the collaboration and maybe like one of your ideas is not really kind of in the flow or in the vision of the main team, some of that creative energy and choices can be put in other places to fill the space and really engage so that like if an audience member is looking at you and you're not speaking or singing, you're still engaged in that world. We're all suspending the disbelief together.
Mm. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Honestly, we could talk about that for ages. I know, we're a bit pushed for time because I know you've got other things to get on to. But
Can
well,
I pause for 1 second?
yeah, of course. Go on.
Do you edit anything out?
Uh, not really. No, I sort of continue.
Oh, lovely. So we'll keep this super real then.
Yeah.
My laptop
Yeah.
might be about to die, and I
Okay.
want to make sure that it doesn't while we're talking.
Okay. So,
So we're gonna do like a live test.
so we can pause here. We'll pause here, and then we'll come back.
Okay.
Okay. Three, two, and we're back. Okay, cool. Yes.
Yay.
Yeah. Sorry, a little technical thing there, but we are back
There we go.
and clear. All good, Danny?
All good, my end.
Okay, good. What were we talking about?
We're talking about ensemble.
Ensemble and
Yes.
yeah, collaborations and stuff. Yeah, we've got a bit more time actually, so we can go into this a little bit more. So yeah, your love of ensemble stuff, working collaboratively with other people, and the relation. Yeah, you were talking about the relationships that you have in your room right now, and how you enjoy that same relationship with everyone in the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my favorite examples of this is actually in Les Mis. And my good friend Andy Coxon and colleague in Les Mis, he portrayed the role of Montparnasse.
Hmm.
And there's a section where Eponine is introduced and the Thénardier gang kind of progress in a line downstage. And something that we developed like we put a lot of effort and energy into this. It wasn't like, oh, we'll just see what happens. And I'm really, really proud to have been able to work with so many passionate actors and performers on this, and people who, really, really wanted to be there and were really excited to dive in. Especially in a long running show, there's a lot of the blueprint that's already laid out. And so, it takes a really creative performer to come in and like, re-energize and make those tracks exciting, even though you're following a certain pathway. And the relationship between Montparnasse and Eponine, for us, we felt really established who these people were in their behavior, in their responses to each other. Even though if you watch the show, you may never have noticed this relationship. They don't really talk to each other. There's nothing in the lyrics that suggest, so this was all created by us that was subtle enough not to pull from the direct storyline, right? Because that's the balance, is you don't want to be doing something, a whole four-act play in the
Yeah.
back of Lovely Ladies when we've got to be looking at Fantine.
Mm.
So, move with balance and awareness, but with detail. And so still, it's one of my favorite onstage character relationships that was not part of the direct storyline for the audience.
Mm.
And for Eponine, one of the most exciting things for me, I love immersive theatre.
Mm.
We all know Les Mis is not necessarily immersive, so don't worry, I'm getting there. But I love immersive theatre. I love to see it. I love to be in it and around it. I think it's incredibly exciting. And so Eponine's first entrance from the production, now, for anyone listening today, if you've seen Les Mis in the past couple of years, the current production is a new directed and designed version. So this was 2012,
Mm.
just so we're all in the same place at the
Yeah.
Queen's Theatre in London, which has now been renamed, I believe. And Eponine comes out into one of the booths, which would usually be like a box seat in the stalls. And what's very, very sweet is young Eponine is with her. So
Mm.
it's one of the children who plays young Eponine before we do the 20-year skip. And we sit there together as in like the sewers of Paris, and we're singing over all the audience really close. And it almost felt like this secret place that Eponine got to check out the audience before they really got to see her.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. And I imagine that's like a lot of what immersive theatre is, because you're around a lot of people. So it really felt that way for me. And so that was a really fun way to kind of ease into a character as like an introduction.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think and that's a very good example of that, really. I remember seeing you, I think it was a matinee we saw, and you just, like you said, creating stories just with the other characters and stuff. I think Epeline was approached by someone who was trying to sort of like harass her or push her around or something. And I remember you turned around and I saw you just mouth to the other actor. like that. And I just thought,
I mouthed something naughty.
yeah, now something naughty. Yeah. Yeah, we can swear on this, by the way. Fuck it. But yeah, you're like, fuck off or something like that. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. But no, but in a good way, in a good way. You know how you build relationships. You know these character relationships with each other on stage, and how you can be. I suppose in a way it is immersive because you're immersed into. Obviously, it's not by definition. It's not immersive theatre. We're not doing.
Mm.
We're not doing Punch Drunk or anything right now, but you know, we are in a world of the French Revolution. We are in a world of poverty, of deprivation, of prostitution, of the wealth sit on their big high horses over here, and the poor are all in the gutter over here. And you know, I think there's that brilliant song that Thénardier has. You know, dog eats dog. You know, and
Mm.
that's a big metaphor, I think, for what it was at the time. You know, but speaking of songs, you know, you have that brilliant, lovely song that Eponine has, "On My Own." As you mentioned earlier, it talks about unrequited love, of isolation, loneliness. You know, it's just those first few lines, and oh God, I've forgotten it already. Sorry, bear with me. Is that, and now I'm all alone again, nowhere to turn, nowhere to go to, without a home, without a face, without a friend to say hello to. And now the night is near, and I can make believe he's here. You know, I mean, just a big shout out to the late Herbert Kretzmer, who actually wrote the lyrics, by the way, just an absolute genius. I mean, what was it like playing that song every night? Because that's another one that a lot of people know, especially Les Mis fans.
Absolutely. I adored approaching that song every night. And I remember when the Revolve started,
Oh
and
God, yeah.
you get about 6 steps in the intro after leaving Jean Valjean being held through the gate. And for me, the song started in the interaction with Jean Valjean.
Yeah.
For anyone who hasn't seen the show or is unfamiliar, Jean Valjean catches Eponine as she's leaving the gates and kind of like lets her go. And it's directly after that scene. And so for me, that scene was such an activator. It was such an activation. And get to do that with Geronimo was just incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. 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 Every single night, what a committed performer. It was truly so wonderful to watch and be on stage with him. And those first few steps, kind of hearing the start of that music, and again, thinking, oh gosh, we've already had one iconic song, and now we're in a show with another one. No pressure. Um, I loved exploring all the changes we spoke earlier about, like, making those decisions and when those decisions happen, letting those decisions happen in real time, making sure that you are prepared as an actor to allow those decisions to come in and be discoveries in the moment so that they're not practiced and rehearsed, whilst also being incredibly practiced and rehearsed so that you're safe and you can do your job 8 shows a week.
Yeah.
I think that is part of the skill and craft that musical theatre actors are amaze me because, they have to be so well rehearsed and so on every beat and moment or placement on the stage as things change, but also be live and present and stay in the moment and keep room for spontaneity and surprises. Whilst maintaining consistency in a show for audiences in a long running show. And I think all of those things are constantly moving around and working together. And so I have a lot of respect, so much respect, of course. I love what we do for musical theatre performers. It's one of the many reasons. And On My Own kind of terrified me at first, honestly. There's some big notes at the end. We
Yeah.
talked earlier about why notes are written in certain places. Some of the larger notes at the end of that song are written in a vocal place. I can only speak of my own experience, my own voice, because we all have a different voice, that feel uncomfortable at times, or in the placement where we want the sound to be. A voice has two modes, chest voice, head voice, mode one, mode two. They're written on some like vocal breaks in some areas. And so to get the sound that I wanted, that the musical director wanted, and to be incredibly honest and true to the story, I found that was a really fascinating journey for me because I never, until I returned 3 years later, and I think I'd worked on a few different vocal techniques, I'd seen a few different teachers and had like some new approaches.
Mm.
Something that was really exciting to me, but also terrifying, which is a world I like to live in the middle of, was that that song never felt safe to me.
Mm.
It never felt like, oh, pff, I got this in the bag. I don't know if I ever feel like that with anything because it's not the way I'm built.
Mm.
But I know a lot of vocalists can stand and just deliver that song and it will ping out and sound, the same every night. And it's beautiful and kind of like easy to get to. We'll have different ranges, we'll have different techniques, all that good stuff. And for me, something I found interesting is that when we got towards the end of the song, I really had to work for that every single night.
Mm.
And when I got when we got there, it was because I had set myself up from the beginning of the song. And I truly believe that because, our voice is the window into our soul, our heart. And so when we're upset, we're crying, our voice changes. When we're happy and we're having the best day, our voice changes. The tension, the sound, the where it sits. And so what's interesting is, you're in a very stressful show in a stressful kind of place and seeing what that does to your voice. And so for me, the more connected I can be in any song, not just on my own, to the intention and to the character, the more I know that my voice will deliver the sound I'm aiming for. And something that, as a vocalist and as a performer, and something that I'm always very dedicated to, and I think this is just my style of approach, is I'm always true to the story and to the emotion.
Mm.
And of course, we train, we sing safely, we have techniques, we want all of that. Like, this is a musical. We want like audiences to enjoy the sound, of course. And I believe that by being connected to the character and telling that story, that authentic sound will flow through with practice, with technique, with rehearsal, all those good things. But that without that connection, that sound is not going to be the same for
Mm.
me.
Yeah.
And so on my own was like a training ground. There are so many twists and turns and emotional experiences that Eponine goes through in, line by line. And so it felt like an incredible obstacle course, for want of a better word. But, it really was like a training ground of, okay, I'm really in this. And by the time you get to the end of the song, it's like so much has been released and delivered. And the entire role of Eponine for me, telling her story was vital.
Mm.
There's so much detail that can easily be lost, especially we talked about famous songs like, you could just stand, you could just park and bark. You could sing and, it would sound beautiful and people would still enjoy it. It was
Mm.
great. Like, being in a musical has never been that for me. I used to say, and I'm moving away from this kind of like languaging just because I think it doesn't matter, that, oh, I'm an actor first, an actor that sings, that moves. And now I'm like, no, I'm a storyteller. I'm a storyteller.
It's
I
true.
have a voice that I use, the tone of my voice, the style of my voice. Um, it's all my voice in essence, but each character demands a different thing, and a different sound is usually born from that character development and discovery. And so it was a really exciting sound for
Mm.
me to be discovering after doing Dorothy for 2 years in such a clear and clean sound. I was able to kind of like really get in the dirt
Mm.
and bring it down into the body. And so, yeah, it was. Thank you for letting me talk on about that. It was a really
No, no, keep it coming.
challenging and wonderful experience.
Yeah, no, keep it coming, Danny. Keep it coming. But again, there's that we spoke earlier about that moment in Over the Rainbow when she goes somewhere over the rainbow. Whereas in On My Own, you have that pelter of a note at the end where you go, again, the lyrics, my brain, and they'll come back to me.
I
Just
have never known.
no, no, it's the build up to that, which
And
is
the blind with the surge
oh
forward.
yeah, and I know that he is blind. Yeah, no, yeah, and then still I say there is no way for us, and then
Mm.
before that it's his without him his world will without me his world will go on turning, a world that's full of happiness that I have never known. And yet what's it like getting to, I mean, you like you said just now, like you never felt like completely like, oh, I've got this in the bag, it's all good, it's all good.
Mm.
But how do you like, and I'm assuming here, but was there ever like a moment where you're getting to that moment where you're going, okay, here we go, here we go, here we go, and bang, and then once it's over, it's like, okay, good, right, okay, we've done that for today, we've done that for today. Yeah.
I think every performer has that inner voice and that kind of, especially when you've been doing a show for a long time.
Mm,
Um, you're a human being. The weather gets cold. You might not be feeling your best, but you're still able to do your job. And so, our voices change all the time with hormones, like I say, with illnesses, things that go around the building. You're in a very small theater, colds whip around buildings so quickly. And, of course, there's always going to be performances. And they'll probably be the ones you remember the clearest because that's the way our brains work, unfortunately.
yeah.
Where you think, oh, I wasn't thrilled with where that note landed, or oh, I can do that so much better, or just any excuse or time we can kind of like reprimand yourself for something. And you know, after a couple of years, I really tried to stop that behavior against myself because
Hmm.
I always try and reconnect to what's important, which is telling the story in an authentic, honest way. And that is the thing I recenter around is that what I'm doing? Is that what I'm worried about? I think if we all, especially today, where most of the sounds that we engage with and inhale are very overly produced. A lot of the times it's not declared, but there's so many little buttons you can press now on your phone even, and it
Mm,
alters everything. And so, we're hearing our voice inside our head. We're not getting the mix back. We're getting raw vocal. And it's very rare these days anyone hears raw vocals. And so I think it's really easy to give yourself a hard time. And so something that I just come back to and use to center myself is, were you in the moment? Were you committed? Were you present? Did you deliver everything you could? I am someone who every moment that, I'm on stage, I want to deliver the very best that I can. Um, and I'm always, fully there and fully engaged. And I think with that, they can kind of like creep in this desire for perfectionism and for self-monitoring and editing and self-editing whilst you're in a performance. There were definitely a couple performances of Les Mis where I got into my own head and I was critiquing myself as I was singing. And it was
yeah,
pulling me out. And so,
yeah.
you're hearing a line, and you go, well, that was rubbish, or, oh, great, well, that's not good enough. And as soon as I recognized this behavior in myself, I spent a decent amount of time really taking care of that and finding a way to steer clear of it because it's not helpful. It pulls you out of the moment, and it can be really, really hindering and destructive in the long term. And so I know that I'm not alone in
Hmm.
going through that.
Oh
I
no.
know that especially anyone going through or performing in a long running show, you're going to compare yourself to other people. You're going to want to self-edit or be like, well, I'm not as good as this person, or well, that note wasn't as good as last Wednesday when someone gave me a compliment. Or, there are so many things we could do. And my biggest suggestion, because it's definitely worked for me, for my own mental health, for my own commitment to my
Yeah.
performance and my craft, is to recenter around what your intention is. What are you communicating? Why are you here? And I mean that as a human being first, as well as your character. Why are you in the building today? Why are you standing on the stage? And what is your job? Your job is to deliver this story, that your character within this story, to the best of your ability on this day as a human being, given all of the things around you. And if you can show up and do that, I mean, you're already half the way there.
Yeah, exactly. And also I think from a sort of a mental health perspective, not to get like, I'm not you're not trained in this sort of thing, but obviously, you want to say the right things. I think I'm reminded of a story that Denise Gough told when she first did People, Places and Things, which started at the National. I'm not, did you see
Mm.
it at all?
No, no, I was here.
Yeah. Oh, if you've got National Theatre at home, I'm not sure if you have it in America, but
Oh,
it's
yes, you can watch online. Oh,
yeah, it's on that platform now. If you can get it in America, then just watch it. It's just brilliant. It came back last year for a stint at the Trafalgar Theatre. It was on at the Noel Coward, I want to say it was. Yeah, Noel Coward or Wyndham's, one of the two. But it was started at the National first. Anyway,
okay.
she told this story that she was on day one at the National, and she said, "I just couldn't stop crying. I just couldn't stop crying." And someone came up to her and said, "No, Dana, you absolutely deserve to be here." And she went, "No, I'm not mistake. Don't mistake. I don't think I know I deserve to be here. It's just, this, it's just all this stuff. I don't, how am I going to do this job?" And I think hopefully I've done that story justice. So Denise, if you are listening, I hope I did that justice for you. But it's just that you are there for a reason because the producers, the cast, they believe in you. Your voice is strong enough to do that job, despite what that little imposter syndrome voice in your head says to you. You are more than capable of doing this job. And, I think like any creative, whether you're a musical theatre, straight actor, artist, choreographer, anything to do with the arts, musical, moving director, MD, whatever it is, you are more than capable of producing great work. And our journey is to not let that voice in our head try and, even though they say it's trying to protect you, your inner critic's trying to protect you. I did a whole episode with this with someone called Annalie Howling. She talks about the inner critic and stuff, and she said how it's actually there to help. It actually does want the best for you, but it's protecting you against stuff which they think you're about to walk out on that stage. You're about to perform on my own. You're about to perform over the rainbow to 2,000 people. This can't be good. We've got to. How do we stop it from doing it? And it's like, and actually, we've got
It's a
to.
very natural instinct that is there
Yeah,
for a very good reason. But yeah, I think the way we work alongside that inner
yeah,
voice, knowing when to allow that voice a seat at the table, right? Like there's a time for fear to talk, there's a time for everyone to have a seat and share their piece in your brain.
yeah,
But kind of like making sure you have a really healthy system that doesn't debilitate you from doing the thing you love to do, as you said, that, you're there for a reason.
yeah. So you are good enough, and ultimately you can do it. And it's just like a little mantra, like every day to say to yourself, yeah, we're here for a reason because we are good enough and we can do it. And ultimately, yeah, some nights are just not our nights, but the most important thing to do. And I think what's great about theatre is you've got another chance to do it. And particularly on a matinee day, you'd be like, you finish a matinee and be like, oh, okay. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, that note wasn't good. But to everyone else, it was like, you're great. What are you talking about? And whereas later, when you do it correctly, well, correctly, you feel like you do it better again in the evening, then you can sort of finish the day like, okay, yeah, today was a good day. But it's already a good day because we notice things about ourselves which are completely insignificant. We blow completely out of proportion, but yeah, ultimately are not as bad as we think they are. Anyway,
Yeah. And I
yeah,
think like to round out that thought, to also, if possible, release the attachment of that it was a good or bad day based on anything that, you know, your voice did. Again, if we're
mm,
coming back to, were we honest, were we authentic, were we committed, and did we give our best shot? Like
mm,
that's kind of the cutoff. Like if you gave everything you have, then that is That is wonderful.
Mm,
Um, and also, it is really important. That might be someone's first time ever and last time ever seeing that show. And
mm,
so thinking that you made a mistake, or like, look, I've fallen. I have fallen onto my hands and knees on the London Palladium after Somewhere of the Rainbow, the one time my mom came to watch the show, um, right after the song during the applause, and crawled off the stage in shock. Like, I've had the thing that you fear happening happen. And it was still a great show.
yeah.
It was a wonderful show. And so I think like releasing some of that pressure off ourselves, knowing that every show is is great. If you are committed and you're fulfilling all of those promises to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, again, another thing we could talk about for ages, but yeah. But no, it's just yeah, you're more than capable, and that's it. Don't listen to what anyone says. Least of all, your inner critic, because you're strong enough, guys. Of course you are. Danny, this has been terrific. I know we've got a few minutes left. I know you've got another call to get on to in just a moment, but I just got a few more things left for you today.
Great.
But I suppose very quickly, before we get on to the last two questions, I just want to say quickly about stamina, like voice stamina, and looking after your voice specifically, because you've got, again, Eponine and Dorothy, like just two of the roles that you've done, very vocally demanding. Got to get you through 8 shows a week. What's the best way that you found to maintain your voice every week?
So a couple of things. The first one is adequate rest.
Hmm.
Adequate rest. The second, hydration. If you are doing these two things consistently, you're pretty good to go. If you've got a good technique, you've worked the show and the track safely into your voice in a sustainable way. If you are well rested and consistently hydrated, your voice is going to work with you. Looking after your body. Now, I'm going to backtrack to being 18, being 19, doing 8 shows a week.
Sure.
I definitely didn't get adequate rest. One, there was no time on Over the Rainbow and Dorothy, and I felt the consequences of that. Two, I've never been someone who has a bottle of water attached to them. Now I am because I have to be. And I've learned that also something, and every single voice teacher will tell you this, so I'm just going to reiterate.
Yeah.
You're drinking water today for the you tomorrow, right? Maybe even the day after, really. But just because you're sipping warm teas and drank loads of water the morning before you have a show that night or a big audition or concert, that hydration is probably not going to kick in until a few days later or the day after. And so being prepared and always being consistently hydrated is going to be your friend. When I say rest, I mean silence. We're not going out, we're not talking over loud music, we're not overly socializing with our voice. Now, this changes track to track. I've had some shows, like I played Rizzo in Greece, here in the States, and I was able to do a lot more socializing because that role was less vocally taxing for me personally, not for everybody. Then when I played Sandy on the UK tour, I could hardly go out and enjoy social interactions without paying a very large price
Mm.
vocally. And so I think you need to understand what your body needs. I was ashamed for a long time about the amount of rest that I need to be able to sustain 8 shows a week in the roles that I do. And sometimes you might find yourself looking at another cast member, maybe someone who does your role once every 2 weeks, or if there's someone who finds a certain role in the show not vocally demanding, so AKA maybe me as Rizzo in the other Grease, who can go out and do these things. It's so vital that you do not compare your need for rest and hydration with your castmates.
Yeah.
Every role is going to demand something different. I've learned that the hard way. And now, with 15 years of experience, I'm able to implement that consistently. Where you're working is also going to affect your voice. I've worked in the end of the Grease tour, we did a stadium tour. Working in a stadium was completely different to working in a regular theatre for the sound, for the cold. I felt like the second I walked on stage, I was dry, and I'd never felt that before in the whole year of doing the role. It was very much in my voice. And I was like, wow, it's a good job I know where to place this and that I'm so hydrated, and had to take extra measures. The same when I was working in Bangkok for 3 months, working on developing a new musical. It's extremely hot and humid in Bangkok, and so there's a lot of air conditioning within all of the buildings. This also then resulted in kind of like a dry atmosphere on stage, and I had to make sure that I was very well hydrated every day so that the future me was able to sustain. The role I played, Catherine, the leading lady in Waterfall, a new musical, a beautiful Thai story, was the hardest role I have ever done. I would put it right up there next to Dorothy in terms of stage time, but with more vocal need. Dorothy doesn't actually sing that much, but the speaking, sometimes a heavier dialogue track can be more taxing than a heavily sung track. I think a fully sung through show can be an easier kind of routine on your voice than when you keep coming into your dialogue and going into a song, especially if they're heavily emotionally charged scenes where you're holding a lot of tension. So having a really great routine and some great techniques to make sure that you're releasing that. So I'd say rest and hydration are our baseline. Everyone can do. It's easy. You don't need a vocal teacher for that. You just need to be like really disciplined with yourself.
Yeah.
And then the third thing I would say is that having that vocal safety and technique, working with someone that you trust. Working on your voice is a very vulnerable space to be in. And so even if it might be the best voice teacher in the world, if they don't make you feel safe and comfortable, it's probably not the person you should be working with.
Oh yes, I've been
And
there.
so
Yeah.
oh, sorry. And so that's really important.
Yeah.
And that will help you sustain. So if you begin in a healthy place, you're not going to be kind of like catching up, taking care of bad habits later. I really like to work with a vocal coach at the beginning of any new role so that we can experiment and see if there's any new places in my voice this could sit and feel more comfortable, feel more safe. And that's something as I've gotten older that I've really kind of like found has been a huge help. So it's something I would recommend to anyone. But I think the rest and the hydration is going to do wonders. Honestly, that's what I come back to. It's what I try and do every day, even when I'm not working. Just keeping
Yeah.
ourselves healthy.
Yeah. I remember interviewing Eve Chano Wilson recently. She's currently doing Christine and Phantom in London at the moment. And throughout the interview, I remember she had this huge, like 3 liter bottle of water, like next to her, like, oh, and she said, I keep this with me all the time now, and keep it filled up and just rehydrating all the time, because just to keep that maintenance and stuff. Yeah. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Hydrate for the future you, because it probably won't impact you that evening. I know a lot of, and I love a herbal tea. I love warm teas, but they're not touching your vocal cords, right? Like your body needs to be hydrated at a very base level. And so teas are lovely and comforting, but it's not touching your vocal cords. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I've
have them
heard,
for comfort and warmth, but
yeah.
hydrate.
Yeah. I think honey's good as well. I think like is it honey's good, but up to a point?
Anything that helps heal your body, but I think just keeping in mind that anything that you're doing is for the future you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, fantastic stuff. Yeah, this has been great, Danny. Thanks for today. I just got the last two questions for you.
great.
But I'd love to have you back. I've still got so many more questions for you.
Oh,
But yeah, no, we'll get a part two in at some point. I'd love to talk to you again. So the final two questions for every guest, well, for part ones anyway, are the first one is, what would you say was a bit of advice you wish you heard at the beginning of your professional career?
ooh, so many things. The one thing that's coming to the top of my head is around permission.
Mhm.
Permission to rest, permission to have ideas and boundaries around things. I think it's very easy when you start to just kind of like want to keep everyone happy and calm, and you can self-sacrifice a little bit by just keeping the peace. And I think sometimes people really want to hear your ideas. You're there for a reason, right? Like you're creative. And so it takes time to build up this confidence. But if I can offer permission to a younger me or to anyone who's like starting out, is the permission to take up that space and bring in what you do, because that's what is wanted. That is what is needed. And don't try and fit what you think everybody wants. And I mean that when you've booked the job even. So not, I know usually this advice is given for auditions, like don't try and predict what the panel want. Go in and do your version. Even when you get the job, there can be a tendency when you're younger to kind of just surrender and be like, oh yeah, whatever you want. And so my permission would be, with grace and respect, always, we're there as a team, we're there to collaborate. But don't be afraid to share your thoughts and ideas too, because that's why you're there. It's why you're doing it. So I think the permission is huge.
Yeah. So you give yourself permission to do all these things, and you have
Yeah.
yeah. Again, don't let that inner voice tell you otherwise. Just you're allowed to ask questions. You're allowed to try things. You have more than just permission to do that. More than anything, which is good. Yeah, that's a really good one. And finally today, what would you say, and you've probably answered this already, but what would you say was an experience or experiences you've had in your career up to now that you'll never, ever forget?
Getting to create, develop, and be a part of writing a completely original character in a new, fully staged show in Bangkok as part of Waterfall with a local Thai cast, as we're telling a Thai story with lots of consultants. And I have never felt more creative, more respected, and more alive and closest to me and myself and more challenged. I will never forget it. Richard Maltby, David Shire, their new musical, and getting to be out there, work with Josh Dela Cruz, John Briones, and be out there in a new country for 3 months and be so wholly embraced by so many wonderful people. And I got to sit on the floor at we rehearsed in very late in the evening because it's very warm, and so our rehearsals were kind of like 2 p.m. until 11 p.m. And so I'm sat on the floor at 11:15 p.m. with the writers, like running through the lyrics for this song, and we start talking about it, and I come in the next day and I'm like, oh, this feels really great. I feel really connected to this. And one of the writers says, well, it's because that's half of what you said last night. And so being able to be with so much permission to be yourself and bring your own creativity in its full bloom and full version to life in a room with so many people who I'm, if you're not familiar with Richard Maltby and David Shire, please go and check out the work. Incredible. To be, sat in a room with these wonderful writers and composers and get to be such a part of that creative process for me. I will never forget as long as I live. It may have been the best time of a highlight of my career in the past 10 years.
Oh, for sure. It sounds fantastic. Yeah. And just before we came on, just before we finish, I'll be asking a very cheeky question, if I may. You were talking about I think we were talking about a book and a brand new thing brand new musical that you were writing. What can you tell us about that? Any small details at all?
Absolutely. I would love to give you a little insight. So, I'm writing a Celtic fantasy. At the moment, it's a song cycle style musical in its first initial edition.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the music will be released this year. I started to write the novel alongside because I wanted to pull from my own lore, my own myths and my own story. And so I started, whenever I wasn't feeling inspired about writing the musical, I thought, oh, I'm going to start writing the book. And so what has happened is I've been simultaneously writing both, to make sure I can kind of maintain that creativity and that writer's flow. And it's been so exciting. I'm loving working on it, and I cannot wait to share some of the music
Yeah. So where will people find the music when it's available?
on all major platforms and things when it's available, but I'll make sure there's proper announcements. I'm mostly active. I don't have a TikTok. I've never been on TikTok, if I'm honest.
Yeah, me neither.
I have an Instagram, so that's the best place to find me and to get updates about that. And I'll probably start posting pretty soon. But thank you for asking. I'm really excited about it.
No, it's good. Yeah, I remember us talking just before we came on. I thought I've got to get that in somehow. Obviously, you can't tell us too much about it because you want it to be a surprise, but we look forward to hearing more Celtic stuff from yourself, Danny. So yeah, we look forward to that. Yeah. Yeah, Danny, this has been absolutely great. I know I've said that about 3 times now, but thank you so much for your time today and everything. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you today, and you've been a real inspiration of mine. Seeing you and the Queens doing On My Own as Eponine, and was just like one of those moments I thought, wow, she's good, ain't she? She's good, isn't she? Yeah, and you just reliving stuff and hearing your music as well, your singles, Trouble and Lie to Me, everything. Yeah, got a question about those, but we'll save those for another time. But more from us to follow, guys. So check this out in the future. So if you just hang on, Danny, I'll finish the recording and we'll have a little debrief afterwards. Then you can get on to your next call. But wow.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Oliver.
No. Thank you for your time, Danny. And guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic Podcast, and I'll be back very, very soon. And Danielle Hope, thank you so much.